This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. And I am your host, Mark. And this guest just blew me away on every front imaginable. Welcome drummer David Abbruzzese to the show. If the name sounds familiar, it's probably because he was in the biggest band in the world at what I consider their peak. Dave played drums for Pearl Jam from 1991 to 1994. For me, this was when the band could do no wrong. But as David tells me, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on. That includes a cursed music video that was so bad it was not only trashed, it almost destroyed Dave's musical career. But that's jumping ahead. Dave joins me from a distant time zone just after a dental procedure. But he was kind enough to hang with me for a couple of hours. A lot happened between his birth and Pearl Jam, so Dave sheds a little light on that. Once we get to the Pearl Jam years, Dave tells some incredible stories like how he got the job, the time he met Spinal Tap, that cursed video, and some stories behind some favorite songs. Dave is also candid about how he was let go from the band and what he's been up to since. He's worked with some incredible artists in Green Romance Orchestra, Guns N' Roses, Peter Cornell, Sean Smith, and the two folks who helped connect me with Dave, Jeff Fielder and Scott Reeder. Thank you both. Follow Dave on Facebook, on Instagram at David Abbruzzese 1968, Free Ass Records on YouTube, and on Bandcamp. Follow us at Performance ANX on socials. Grab merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Send money to ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. And now please enjoy my discussion with David Abbruzzese on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. It's David Abbruzzese. Abbruzzese. Let me try that again. Abbruzzese. Yeah, that's better. It's fucking... Yeah, my speech impediment's killing me today. Hi, it's David Abbruzzese, and you are enjoying my anxiety, listening to Performance Anxiety, and be anxious. Hey, man.
Hey.
Holy shit. Oh.
Are you...
I'll tell you how my morning went. I kind of drugged myself up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to shave and take a shower and wake up. And then all of a sudden my phone's ringing. I'm like, who the fuck is Tim Alexander? And I'm like, okay.
What?
Oh, yeah. Tim started a meeting group of drummers where it's basically, everyone gets together. There's, an unbelievable amount of people in a Zoom call, and we're all chatting. Next thing you know, I answered. He's like, hey, Dave, introduce yourself. And I'm just like, huh, what, who, where? I'm like I didn't even have a shirt on. I'm just like, God damn. Holy fuck. I don't even know what's going on.
Oh,
and wow. Yeah, it was like waking up in an AA meeting. Like, hello, hi, I'm Dave, and I'm an alcoholic,
and I'm a drummer.
And I'm a drummer. I'm Dave, and I'm a survivor.
Oh,
but yeah. Tim's doing great things. How you doing, Mark?
Good. I've been in touch with Tim to try to get him on the podcast. He said he'd do it, and then I haven't heard from him in a while.
Oh, he's got this big thing going on that he's cooking. He's as he put it, he's maybe we should start because some of this might be good for you.
Oh, I'm already recording.
Okay.
I do the Neil Young thing. I record everything and then think through it later.
It's shaky.
Yeah.
I got some Neil stories for you.
Oh, nice.
But, so Tim's like doing this thing, and I admire it so much because it's kind of where I'm at the moment too. And first of all, before I even get going, you might notice a little speech impediment on my S's because I just got a bunch of dental work done. Oh. And my tongue's a little swollen, so I've got this great like somebody says, like saying my last, hi, I'm Dave Abbruzzese. Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Well, you answered the first question I ever had, which is, how do I pronounce your last name? Because I've heard it like not.
It's Abbruzzese. It's Abbruzzese without the spit bubbles.
Okay.
But Tim's doing this awesome legacy thing.
Okay.
Where he is he's like me. We're becoming aged drummers who didn't fuck around when we were young drummers, and we swung for the fences every night. And we were fortunate enough to become successful to where the fences got further and further away. So we were swinging harder and harder. And so, we injured ourselves. We drove ourselves mad. We were in bands where, we went from struggling together to being successful and wealthy together.
Yeah.
And so we had to endure the mental stress of, personas, people being able to afford the persona,
Right.
which is something that typically drummers don't do, and I think that's why our fraternity is so tight, is that we tend to, if we're fortunate to have the success, we work harder. So we struggle more, we're in pain more, we party less. And, it's funny because most of the drummers I know that are still alive, it's almost as if we went from being crazed maniacs, expressing ourselves by smashing things with sticks,
Right.
to having, more subtle houses, because where we lived is behind our kid. All we needed was that one room that our girlfriend or our wives would tolerate and our neighbors wouldn't be offended by, where our drums were. And it's, as we get older, it's like giving back becomes so important. And as I've gotten older, I've become so proud of my drumming fraternity, because that's the thing I notice most is, whether we become producers or whether, like me, I built a studio and I never charged anyone a dime for working in it, And then, like now producing records, or if somebody contacts me and says, hey, you want to work on a song or an album or whatever, it's like, send me the music,
That's awesome.
And it's like, a lot of people don't do it because they don't think they can afford me. But yeah, most of the time I find myself saying, no, man, if you make money, give me some. If you don't, here's, at least we've got this moment in time,
Oh, wow. Well,
and that's because that's what it's about, and for Tim to be doing this thing, it's to me, it's inspiring and humbling and beautiful. So,
well, that that makes me so happy. I'm actually doing a project in a similar vein, and I'll mention that to you. And if you're interested in participating, let me know. I have put together a tribute album to Spinal Tap. I don't do any. I'm not a musician, so it's not me at all. It's former podcast guests and whatever bands they're in, and we're donating all the money to charity. Spinal Tap is on board with this. They're happy. We're hoping that we're actually having meetings with them in Bleecker Street to try to tie this into the promotions with the sequel that's coming out.
Well, I'm in. Count me in.
All right.
And any way you need me, I'll play any instrument you want. If you need another bass player for Big Bottoms, I'm in. It's crossed. The exploding drummer trick has come up more than once with my tenure with Pearl Jam, and I have a Spinal Tap story that I've never been able to tell that I'd love to tell you.
Oh, well, let's talk about it.
All right, here's my Spinal Tap story.
Yes.
All right, here we go. I just had a big cup of coffee, so I'm ready.
Nice.
And you can hear me okay. We're not having any audio problems or anything?
No, it sounds fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, keep me posted, because I did a podcast where I rambled for an hour and a half, and then when I heard it back, I was cutting out every third word, and they didn't tell me.
Oh, jeez.
Here it is. The scene is the early 90s. The show is the LA Palladium. It's Alice in Chains, L7, Pearl Jam, and the Soundgarden,
wow.
and the headliner, Spinal Tap.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. So I walk in, and first thing when I walk in the door, I open the back door, and standing there all by herself is Joan Cusack. And I'm like, wow, hey,
Wow.
And this is and what an amazing actress, amazing person.
Oh yeah.
But So I don't know if she would want me to say that she partook, but anyway, smoked a little bit of reefer.
Okay.
And then we're sitting there, her and I are sitting there talking. And the back door, there's like a side door, like a fire exit or whatever, it's open.
Okay.
And all of a sudden we see this limousine slowly pull up into the parking lot. And we're both just sitting there. And the door opens and smoke billows out of this fucking limo, right?
Okay.
And there's nobody else around. And out comes Derek Smalls.
Oh, man.
Nigel Tufnell, and David St. Hubbins, and Eric Carr, who was their newest drummer, who's been drummer for Kiss for 20 years.
Right.
They pile out of this limo in full character, and I'm a little stoned, and I'm just like, oh, this is reality right now. Okay, this is really happening. And they walk in, and they're in full Spinal Tap mode. Oh. They look lost. They're like, where are we? Is this the right place? You know. Oh. But at the same time, you know, they're carrying themselves like, you know, we're fucking Spinal Tap. Right. And so it's totally surreal. That night had many surreal moments, but one of them was it was me and Mike McCready, and Jeff was there, Mike Starr from Alice, Jerry Cantrell was there from Alice, a couple other people. We're all in Spinal Tap's dressing room, and everyone's talking, and I noticed on the far end of the other side of the room, with his back to us for 5-10 minutes, just he hasn't moved, his head is bowed, is Nigel Tufnell.
Okay.
And I'm just watching him, and I'm thinking, okay, because Christopher Guest is, you know, to me, he's just a genius. Yeah. And so I'm watching him.
Absolutely.
And Matt Cameron was there as well. And something came out, everyone's like, let's go out and check out the blah, blah, blah. So everyone's leaving, and I'm still sitting there, and Nigel hasn't moved.
Oh, man.
And he turns slowly to me, and he looks at me, and he looks down, and I walk over, and he's looking down at a deli tray.
Oh, no, not this. Oh, God.
And on the deli tray is... That's the full on, you keep folding it and folding it. And he looked at me, and he looked me right in the eye, and a single tear came out of his eye. Oh, no. Oh my God. I lost my mind. It was like he stood there for 10 minutes waiting for the moment. And it was just me and him left in the dressing room. And I looked at the deli tray, and I remember hearing myself go, and I looked up at him, and at the sound of that chuckle that came out of my mouth, he turned and looked at me, and that single tear came out of his eye. Oh my God. I hit the floor with laughter, and he turned around, his back to me again, and just stared at the deli tray. I crawled out of that room laughing my ass off. Oh my God. It was one of the funniest moments of my life.
That is the best story I've ever heard.
Oh, the single tear is just like the Indian on the side of the road, you know?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
So brilliant. Oh, so brilliant.
God. Man, you know. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. In a career with some incredible highlights, that would be one of the top for me.
Oh, yeah. You know, that night went on to be, I was playing Sean Kinney's kit, and the drums were crawling across the stage while I was playing. So I ended up hyperextending my wrist. Oh. And then that night after that gig, Pearl Jam went to the closed down Los Angeles Zoo and attempted to make an epic even flow video, which ended up getting tanked. But during that even flow video, I blew out the tendon in my right thumb.
Oh my God.
Air drumming to God damn it. And
Oh my.
and ended up rushed to the emergency room, where in the emergency room, it's 6 a.m. We're supposed to be on a flight at like 8 or 9 to head to Europe for our first European tour.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm sitting there, and the doctor comes in. He says, and it's me and the band's manager at the time, Kelly Curtis. And the doctor says, "So what do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a professional drummer." He says, "Not anymore, you're not."
Oh.
I was like, what? And then Kelly got on the phone. I'm sitting there in so much pain I could barely breathe. This doctor telling me I'll be lucky if I can even hold a cigarette or use a lighter again for the rest of my life.
Oh my!
And Kelly Curtis is on the phone with Denny Carmassi. He's got him on hold, saying, "So what are you gonna do, Dave? What are you gonna do?"
Wow!
Yeah. So I said, "Well." He said, and so I told him I'm going, I'm not bailing. I mean,
yeah.
And so I made the decision to go, and that started my, I guess my lifelong commitment to playing in severe pain whenever I pick up a drumstick. But it didn't stop me. Yeah. I mean, I played that first European tour with a couple metal plates and my wrist duct taped. And then halfway through the tour, I blew out the same tendon on my left hand.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, it was terrible. But, I survived it,
Oh, okay. So I've got so many questions right now. But let's kind of start off this way. You're born in Connecticut, moved to Texas when you were a kid.
Yeah, raised in Texas. I made my mistakes in Texas, so I say I was raised there. Well, I guess first of all, was music a big part of the family there, and was drumming the first thing that you did musically? Well, it was. Music wasn't a big part of the family, though. Music. To me, what it represented was I'd hear my mom in the kitchen. If she was singing while she was in the kitchen, I knew it was going to be a great day. That's how music was. And my folks had gotten me this from a garage sale, this closed top. When you opened it, you put a 45 on it, and when you closed it, it played.
Oh, yeah.
And the only 45 I had, which came with the record player, was a 45 that had the Beatles' Birthday on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I was like, oh, man. Yeah. And so that, for whatever reason, started my every Christmas, what do you want for Christmas? Drums. Yeah, what do you want for Christmas? Drums. And, that year I got my Mickey Mouse drum set with the paper heads that destroyed in 2 or 3 days. And the only thing that survived was the kick drum. So I had that bass drum and the Beatles, Birthday. So I was in me and my younger brother's bedroom, boom, 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 boom. And that's what started it off for me, And then I just every Christmas would destroy another drum set. And until was I maybe 11, 12, my older brother found an oak. It was a dark brown wood grain, one of the ugliest drum sets I'd ever seen, but I loved it. Ludwig drum set. Oh. And that started the passion. Actually, I'm going to take it back. Before the Ludwig, there was I think it was called an Apollo or something like that. A drum set. It was my first drum set that you could actually tune the drum heads,
Oh, okay.
And it was sparkly and made of particle board. And then I got the Ludwig kit, and then I discovered Judas Priest. And next thing you know, I had a wood grain Ludwig kit mixed with that other kit. So I had the 2 bass drums, and
somehow you got to incorporate the Mickey Mouse drum in there.
that thing was well gone by that point. Well gone. It came up later in life when I was fortunate enough to play with a band called Course of Empire. It was a 2-drummer band. My Ludwig kit on stands, playing the kick drum. We would swap back and forth between the kit and kind of the percussive tribal setup, and took me right back to the old closet Mickey Mouse kit.
Oh man! So how old were you when you started playing in bands? I mean, were you playing in school before venturing out with?
My first time playing out when I was a kid. Again, I was looking through my older brother's high school yearbook. He was 5 years older than me, and I saw this dude standing there with some quad toms on, and he had his chest puffed out, and he was just like, he was the man. His name was Reagan Robbins. And I remember thinking, wow, that looks cool.
Yeah.
And around that same time, I saw, AC/DC on the back of Black Tour and touched Angus Young's leg.
Oh, wow.
And I saw Triumph. It was their Allied Forces tour, and Gilmore, had everyone's fist pumping in the air, and I was like, man, there's something to this. This is awesome. Yeah. And I saw Ted Nugent, and then I saw Judas Priest. It was a big year. It was like great music back then. And Riot with Sandy Slavin, who's become a friend, and all these unbelievable. Like really, that's back when you left a concert and you could barely walk because it was so loud. And so,
I've been to some of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Showco sound system was just like terribly awesome, but all that was happening, and I wanted to learn how to play drums. I knew how to bang on them, but I didn't know how to bang on them. And, I went in 7th grade, auditioned for band, and got there, and both my folks worked, so it was like, we didn't go to the first day. We went, it was like towards the last day of registering, and we showed up, and Terry Barentine, the band director, she said, "Well, our percussionist," she said, "What do you?" And I said, "Oh, I want to play drums." And she said, "Oh, well, percussion's already full up." And I was like, and she's like, "Let me look at your mouth, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I think you'd be great with this." And I'm like, looking at my mom like, "You got to be fucking kidding me, French horn."
Oh,
I don't want to play the French. All the good spots were taken.
Yeah.
So my mom, I left the room for a second, and when I came back in, my mom had secured the opportunity somehow. I don't know if she threatened her or what.
Oh, go mom.
But she had me come in, and Miss Barentine made me go through the, tap your foot, you go alternate your hands. Can you do checking my coordination? Mm-hmm. And I was just all over. I was on it. And I got it, And so I got to be able to, be a part of the percussion ensemble in the band.
Nice.
And 7th grade band, they taught us a little about notation and a little about, how to hold a stick, but it was a flute player teaching the class,
Yeah.
So by the time I started getting really bored with it, I just started changing shit up. Like I was taking the parts and rewriting them.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't necessarily know what I was doing. I was just moving notes around. I don't know why I was doing it. Just keeping myself occupied. And then one day she noticed that I wasn't really doing what I was supposed to be doing. But I was first chair, and she just said, "Well, whatever,
Oh, wow.
I guess she saw that I was passionate about it, and she said, "Well, keep doing what you do." I mean, I was rewriting everybody's parts with no rhyme or reason, And
that's incredible.
And so I did that, and on my way home from school, carrying, and I also played contrabass. So I had to carry the blue plastic muscle percussion tap thing, which was a pad, a stand, and a xylophone in one hand. And in the other hand, I had a full-size contrabass.
Oh, my God.
And, I walked to and from school. And it's no joke. It was up and downhill. And it was about two miles. And at the halfway point to being home, there was an upholstery shop for automotive upholstery.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I would stop and, shoot rubber bands at the wasp nests and, whatever, just before taking the final hill home.
Yeah.
And I started talking to the dudes that worked there. And one day I saw in the back of, I don't know if it was a Ranchero or a truck. I think it was a Ranchero.
Nice.
I saw drum cases. And stenciled on the drum cases was the name Reagan Robbins.
Ah.
And I was like, no way. And so I went in and I ended up getting an after school job sweeping up, but I got to hang out and get to know this mythical creature named Reagan Robbins. And all this winding up to the question you asked, which was, when did I, this is the first time I played out. Reagan invited me to be his roadie.
Okay.
For VFW. He played in a country band. He had this big, beautiful stainless steel Ludwig drum set. And I went up there and he and the band invited me to set in, and it was a, proper Texas country band, steel guitar, girl smacking a tambourine on her leg, the whole bit.
Yeah.
And everyone wearing cowboy hats and all that stuff. And I played ZZ Top's LaGrange. That was my first performance. Yeah. And then in 8th into 9th grade, I got assigned to play quads for the North Mesquite marching band in high school. So I became Reagan Robbins for a moment, and I made it through that marching season. And then when symphonic band started, the school was huge and the band was hundreds and hundreds of people. So they split the marching band up into 3 different symphonic bands. And me and my group of thugs, if we didn't have it was the 80s. If you didn't have a doobie on the way to school listening to Ozzy on your Krager stereo with 31 band graphic EQ, you weren't shit. So we would show up and it was Everclear and Punch and doobies at 5:30 in the morning before marching. And then when we split up for symphonic bands, it would just be, us peering over the percussion cabinet, giggling. And one day the band director asked, Mr. Abbruzzese, what is so funny back there? And again, it was the 80s. There wasn't no political correctness yet. I said, you. And he threw his backwards bent hand on his hip and said, what is so funny about me? And I said, you're a fag. So he pretty much drugged me out of the band hall by my ear and told me never to come back. And so I didn't have to come to school until 9:30 every day after that, because band was first period. And that didn't really help motivate me to stay in school. So my dad would drop me off at school and I would just start walking a couple of miles down the service road to Warren Sewell's house, who was the guitar player in my band. I would take him to work at his liquor store. And then I would go back and play his guitars and work on Leonard Skinner songs and pretty much just stopped going to school at that point, and the rest is history.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that was it for me about learning.
Yeah.
But school taught me a lot.
Yeah, but learned other things. School was in session. It just wasn't,
in that building. There wasn't. Yeah, there wasn't so much of a grade.
Right. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
But I loved it. I loved it. I wouldn't change a thing. It wasn't easy. And it was risky, you know. I mean, there's no guarantees in this life, but I knew that I wanted to play music, and I knew that I liked smoking weed, and I didn't drink. And, you know, I just, if it wasn't for the music of that era, I mean, it's really, it's what taught me. It's, you know, the messages and the songs of that era kind of raised me, you know? Yeah, it was really a great time to be alive, you know? I mean, it was good. And then in the middle of all that, you know, it was like end of disco, but it was funk, the beginning of, you know, then there was punk and the beginning of new wave, and it was like, wow, there's so much great music, you know?
Yeah. So around the high school era, is that when you were part of the band Dr. Tongue, or was that afterwards?
No, Dr. Tongue came after. I mean, I'd been playing in many different bands. Dr. Tongue was prior to Pearl Jam. That was, what was I, 20? I think I was 20 when we started doing that.
Okay.
And that was, I mean, there was a few years of, you know, different Robert Cooper, Tony Mitchell, and all these other folks, Doug Neal and Daryl. We were just kind of, it was kind of like, I guess like a penguin colony of musicians where we were just hopping nest to nest and sitting on each other's eggs.
That is amazing. I love that analogy.
Yeah, I'd never used that one before, but that's really what it was. And as you know, as we felt ourselves maturing or growing in different directions, we would just hop into another circle of players. And it wasn't like you ever quit a band or you ever got, you know, this or that. You just kind of meandered around, and some things stuck, and you'd play some gigs, and you know, you'd write songs together, and Dr. Tongue came out of that. Daryl Phillips, one of the most incredible players, and Robert Cooper and Doug Neal. These were people I looked up to in such a huge way and learned so much from. And yeah, it was just really great. I mean, these were all guys that, you know, like Kenny Withrow and Mike Gillen, and I mean, all these people I watched play, Matt Chamberlain, Earl Harvin, Paul Slavin, all these people, I would watch them. There was a Club Dada, and they had this great window behind the drummer where you could watch and learn and be amazed, you know? So it was like the social circle outside that club in the street and behind that window. You know, it's like when the band started playing, all the drummers would go outside and watch the drummer, you know? Yeah. And
interesting.
Yeah. So it was really cool. And, you know, so many great players. And everyone, you know, back when everyone was young and trying new things, and so there was always like, you know, it's like you'd go and you'd see that thing that, fucking amazing. And then there'd be something new. It'd be like, oh my God, next level. Everyone was growing so much that it was like fast and furious inspiration. And if you couldn't keep up, you just didn't, you know. And Dr. Tongue was, you know, it started off as one thing and then turned into Pat Hooker and Daryl Phillips and myself. And yeah, you know, we rehearsed in my single car garage with a sand floor. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. And it was great. I mean, it was great, really great times. And you know, we were just doing what we did. And I didn't really, you know, seeing a future in it wasn't about a future at that point. It was about paying a phone bill or this or that, you know? Yeah. And so, you know, and a gig paying $50, it's like, wow, if we could go after the gig and eat a breakfast, man, that was awesome. You know, our girlfriends had the rent, you know? Yeah. So it was just one of those times. And then the Pearl Jam call came through, and that came about because Mike Dillon and Matt Chamberlain were at a Dr. Tongue gig. Well, when Matt was just so happened to be like trying to figure out what he was going to do, leaving Pearl Jam to join the Saturday Night Live band. Yeah. And he was thinking, who should I suggest? And, And I said, well, what about Dave? You know? And so that did that. And, it was all just, just how the little scene worked out,
So before
awesome.
we get too deep into that, I want to learn something here, because Pearl Jam was one of the bands that I got obsessed by. 10 came
Ew, gross.
10, but
just joking.
10 came out in my freshman year of college. And so,
wow.
It was a perfect album for the perfect time in my life. And so it was like Led Zeppelin was the very first band that I got obsessed by in high school. And I would buy bootlegs and wanted to hear all the demos and all. And so Pearl Jam became my own generation's version of that. And I would pick up every bootleg and everything I could find by Pearl Jam. And one of the first bootlegs, I think maybe it was the first one I bought, was called Mookie Blaylock Demos. And there's a song called Mystery on there, and it's supposed to be by Dr. Tongue. So I've always been curious to know if that was actually you.
No idea.
So it is a mystery still.
No, it's still a mystery because I've never heard it.
Oh man. I may have to get it to you.
Now, one thing, I got a question for you, since you take it for what it is, because I mean it this way. You never heard me make a mistake in any of those live demos or live bootlegs, did you?
No.
That's right.
Never.
That is right. Yeah. There you go.
I heard a few other areas of the band, but
But Eddie came in early. I reeled it back in.
Yep. Absolutely.
But that's one of the things I always thought, it's like one day I realized, wow, I can count the mistakes I made on one hand.
Yeah.
Out of my time with that band. I was very incredibly dedicated to that music, for sure. I loved it.
So the story that I heard is that, like you said, Dave Cruzen got kicked out because for alcoholism, and Matt went on because he wanted a gig on SNL.
Yeah, it was more what he was. Yeah, he was more about that, and because at the time, all Pearl Jam was highly in debt,
right,
and about to get in a van and go on tour. And Matt didn't want to do that shit.
Yeah. So you were recommended. You went to Seattle. And the story that I've read or heard or something was that you weren't 100% sure about joining the band until after the second gig. Was that actually the way it worked?
No, it was like really, when I got the tape, when I got the music, I was doing a radio show with my friend Chris. It was Chris's show, and him and I did it together. It was, Chris and Dave's Music We Like show. And we would take calls, and if people would ask us to play something, and if we liked it, we would play it. And if we didn't, we'd make fun of them and then put on some Zappa or something,
I think I would have loved that show.
Yeah, we were a couple knuckleheads. But so I went in one day, and I talked to Chris. I was like, hey, man, I got this opportunity to go to Seattle. So we dug out Mother Love Bone's album, and I had the Pearl Jam stuff.
Okay.
And we put on Mother Love Bone, and I was like, ugh. This is some overproduced tripe. Wow. And so, it was like literally, there's a cassette tape of it somewhere, but literally it's like the song would start and 20 seconds in, you hear the needle go.
Oh, wow.
Next song.
Wow.
And then we put on the Pearl Jam stuff, and it was like, I don't know, man. And Chris was like, yeah, Chris was a drummer too. And I was like, I don't know.
Wow.
And then Chris said something that changed. He said, well, Dave, you ever been to Seattle? I said, no. He said, a free trip to Seattle. I said, hey, you're right. So anyway, I ended up calling the band, calling the management, and Jeff and Eddie were there. And I asked them, I said, well, you guys when I come up, do you want me to play this music as it is, note for note? And if they would have said yes, I would have told them that I wasn't interested.
Oh, wow.
And instead they said, no, just come up and we'll jam. I said, okay, cool. So I went up, and it was like every day I was there for a week. Every day I would hang out with a different guy, and we'd go get coffee or whatever. And then we would go to the rehearsal room, and and Matt's kit was still there, and we would just play some ideas. And at the time, it was still Stone's vision, really, Stone's band, in a sense. So Stone and I spent a lot of time together. Like, he would play a riff, and I would react to it, and we were just kind of feeling things out. And it was on a Saturday that I was supposed to go home, and on Thursday, I asked Eddie, I said, so, when I leave here Saturday, am I going to know whether I have the gig? And he said, well, I think there might be a couple other guys that were checking out. And I thought, okay, well, then fuck it,
Yeah.
So the next morning, I woke up, I called the management office, and I was going to see about moving my ticket forward because I didn't want the gig because a couple other people didn't get it, And Kelly answered the phone, and he said, hold on a second. And about 3-4 minutes went by. And then he got back on the phone and said, okay, the guys are here, and, just wondering how long it would take you to come back with all your stuff, with your drums.
Oh, wow.
I said, oh, okay. So I got the gig. Cool. So I went back to Texas and got my shit, and RJ Harrison and I drove, we rented a 12-foot truck, and we ended up with a 24-foot one. Oh, wow. It was like 2 backpacks, a Ludwig drum kit, and a whole lot of space. and we drove up to Seattle, and I moved into my 5th-story walk-up little apartment, hotel, whatever it was, and and that started that. And we rehearsed for a few weeks, played our first gig at Mural Amphitheater, and then hopped into a van, and
the journey began.
August, September, going through the Southwest in September, 14 people in a 15-passenger van.
Oh, geez.
Waking up with just gig shorts, dripping water or dripping sweat on my face. Then we got the call about Chili Peppers wanted us to come and open up for them, and the cold, the reality of how things work started to set in, and and off we went.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
So you guys were on the road for a long time with 10, weren't you? I mean, it seemed that way.
Well, we were on the road. Nonstop. I mean, we were gigging 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week.
God.
And then at the end of that, we took a couple of months and worked up some ideas that Stone had to a point where it's like, okay, there's a song idea there. And then we went in the studio and made the Versus record, and then went right back out on the road. It was great.
So in your first actual recording with the program, you guys re-recorded Even Flow, right? And then you did Dirty Frank and a couple of tracks like Breath, State of Love and Trust, I think.
No, Dirty Frank was we went, that was in the studio after the Peppers tour had been rolling.
That makes sense.
Because you could hear how, I watched Chad play every night and took some of that into my own playing for sure. Chili Peppers were one of my, Dr. Tongue was, we were Chili Peppers wannabe band, so like Uplift Mofo Party Plan and Mother's Milk and all that, those were staples in my car for sure. Then, we went in the studio and we kind of ran down the set of, like Jeremy and all the 10 songs and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And one of those was the Even Flow, the version that ended up being released as a single. We played the Moore Theater show and filmed it. And the Even Flow video that blew out my wrists on the side of the goddamn zoo in Los Angeles. That was so terrible that we watched it once and we said, okay, burn this.
Oh, wow.
Get rid of it. Yes. We don't want anyone to ever see this ever.
It was a disaster on every front then.
Yeah, it's somewhere in YouTube. Someone posted it up.
Oh my God.
But yeah, terrible. And so, but the band had such momentum at that point. I mean, MTV wouldn't touch the live video because it went against everything they were about at the time. There was no flash to it. It was black and white. It was live.
Yeah.
It was like they wouldn't touch it. But the band's momentum and popularity was such that they were like, they were in a position where it was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
So the record company, they wanted us to do another video. And so we were doing it for Even Flow. That one that we tanked, we happened to have the more footage in the can. So we took the audio from that recording session and it just synced up perfect to the video because I'm a badass. Thank you very much. And
dang professional.
And so that became the single. And it was really great because, especially after the experience of blowing out my wrist air drumming to Dave Cruzen's drum parts, I was like, that's the thing I didn't want to be. I didn't want to do that. I was like, please don't make me do that.
Right.
And luckily enough, we put out that Even Flow video had reached level of popularity where MTV played it. Lo and behold, it was like, wow. Nirvana kind of opened the door to that style of video. It wasn't about, the rented cars and the bitches of hip hop and all that. That was, it wasn't about the $1 million videos anymore. And they let us get away with it. And then, of course, we did the Jeremy video. We did one with Chris Cafaro. That was me air jamming to Dave Cruzen's parts. And that, luckily, I mean, Chris is an amazing guy, and he had a great concept, and the video was cool. But then we bit the bullet and worked with Mark Pellington, or Pellington, and and did the program Jeremy video that, swept the music awards in whatever year that was, and kind of changed everything. And and luckily I didn't have to air jam for that one. So.
Right. Yeah.
But I did get my first lesson in like a director saying, "Okay, we're going to play the track. Just react." And I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
React.
Okay.
So I turned the chair around and I sat there with my elbows on the back of the chair and just stared at the fucking camera for 4 minutes.
Oh.
So that's my appearances in that video, it's like the camera going across and me just going, and then my eyeball at the end, but that was enough. So yeah, we went in and recorded State of Love and Trust, Breath and a Scream, Alone, Even Flow, Dirty Frank. And that was single soundtrack stuff. So
yeah. So I'm trying to get some of the timeline on some of this. Right? So you actually did one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs ever. And it's Yeah, actually, I'm take that back. You are an integral part of my two favorite Pearl Jam songs of all time: Angel and WMA.
Oh, thank you very kindly. Angel was a beauty.
When I got that 45 that single in the mail, it was funny. Yeah. It was like in the middle of a snowstorm. I was at my grandmother's. My dad he went to the house, went and got the mail. He drove half an hour to get to my grandmother's to give it to me so that I could play it.
Nice.
So thank you, Dad. He's at his huge music fan.
Yeah, man. I was kind of bummed that I mean, I'm glad that it got out the way it did, but like that song, I mean, I was staying at Kristen Berry's apartment, which was the apartment that I think they used it as Jane, or what's her name, whatever, Fonda's, her apartment in the Singles movie.
Oh, Bridget. Yeah.
And so Kristen had went to LA. She was working on her career, and I needed a place to stay. So it was like, well, Kristen was cool enough to let me stay at her place. And so, and when I got there, she had a jam box, and I had a little jam box, and she had an old, round back Ovation acoustic. And I picked it up one day, and I just played that thing, and I recorded it onto a jam box, and then I played that jam box back and played along with it, and recorded both those tracks to another jam box cassette player. And then the next day, I got to rehearsal, and I said, "Hey, Eddie, I came up with this thing," and I just handed him the tape. And the next day, when I came into rehearsal, he handed me a tape back. They said, "What do you think of this?" And it was the song Angel in the exact same shape that it was in. I am far from glorified. Oh, I'm not dying. Oh, I'm not alone. Mine is not a celestial state with idle hymns of praise. Time is short, I have an appointment at noon. And during that Dirty Frank session at London Bridge, I think it was Mike McCready who said, "Hey, do you want to record that? You should record that thing." So I got Stone's guitar, and I recorded the two guitar parts, and Eddie recorded the vocal. And then listening back to it was like, wow, this is a really powerful piece of music.
Yeah.
And I remember Mike shared the same sentiment as me when all of a sudden it was, it was like, okay, we're going to do this Christmas single. And on one side of it is us bullshitting. And the other side, holy shit, there's that song Angel.
Yeah.
And, Mike had voiced it before. I don't think I ever voiced it, but it was like, I wish it would have made it on an album rather than on,
Yeah, that's not
but I think
by more people.
Yeah, but I think it was and I don't use the word plagiarism in a true sense, but I think the lyric came from a book that Eddie was reading at the time. Uh-huh. And I think that might have influenced why it was given away rather than put on an album,
okay. That makes
But that's just a guess on my part. I don't know. But through the years, many people have pointed out, wow, those lyrics are from this book.
Interesting. So, okay. I didn't know that. Yeah. So around the time of Versus, how was, this is technically, you did Breath, State of Love and Trust, but Versus is the first full album where you're helping with the writing. Oh yeah. How was that working? Going from working, basically just coming in and playing somebody else's album live, you're a full band member and all, but you didn't record it, so it's a little strange. I have a situation. Now you're actually in the band and helping to write.
It was really cool because the way we did it back then is I would show up at rehearsal and Stone would be there, or he would show up and I would be there, and Stone would plug in and he'd have a riff. He'd have an idea.
Okay.
like the beginning of Animal. Dun, 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 dun. And he would just start playing that over and over. And I would just join in and start playing, and we would work on it, and I'd see the way his body moved. And when I'd start playing, if it changed, I would shift to try to get him back to the way he was moving before. And, so it was an interplay between the two of us. And then the guys would meander in to the rehearsal room. And, a lot of times we'd be playing and someone would plug in and start playing too. And then someone would plug in and start playing.
Nice.
And we would be working on riffs like that. And then if Eddie opened his mouth and started syllabalizing, then inevitably, boom, there would be the kernel of a song.
Okay.
As soon as his melody hit, then I could start playing to the melody, and it would kind of help us dictate where we were going, and so that was pretty much how it went. Mike would come in, and like the glorified G, he just started playing that thing, and it was like, huh. I remember the first time I went click, click, blah, 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 boom, boom, it was like, wow, this feels really good. As soon as Eddie, if it would inspire Eddie to start syllabalizing or putting words to it, then it inevitably would become, that A jam or the Stones riff or this or that. And then all of a sudden it would have okay, it's Animal or 5 Against 1 or Policeman. It would have as soon as Eddie would start putting words like, okay, he's singing, and it's like all of a sudden there'd be a chorus, and it'd be like, okay, that song's Brother, which turned into Daughter, or Policeman, which turned into WMA, and it was basically that was the process, and it was great. I mean, there was no I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I was really trying to pay attention to Stone's body movements that kept it from being Stone telling me, yeah, I don't like what you're doing or this or that, because it was a real free record in the sense that there wasn't ever a moment that I can recall where anyone said, hey, how about you don't do that and you try doing this to anybody. We just all came in and did what we did and played off each other, and it worked. And we had the ideas for the songs, but we weren't married to them yet. Brendan O'Brien would come up, and I was recording all the rehearsals because I couldn't, the 7-foot ceiling, shitty room. I couldn't hear everyone's parts. So I threw mics in front of everybody's amps and laid a microphone on top of one of the vocal wedges, had a little Mackie board, and so I could hear what everybody was doing.
Oh, wow.
That way. And also at the same time, I was recording DAT tapes of all the rehearsals. So I would hear the arguments and the discussions and all that stuff. And I'd go home every night and put on headphones and listen to what we did and try to work, okay, I can tell where I needed to really emphasize where, if I felt like something needed to change, I needed to really dramatically say, bah, 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 okay, here we're going into something different,
Okay.
So it was that practice. And then our producer, Brendan O'Brien, would come up and he'd sit Indian style on the floor and listen to us run down the, 10, 11 songs, the ideas that we had. And then we decided to keep them fresh. And when we went into the studio, the way Brendan worked was very quick, really, really great.
Oh, cool.
We got sounds really fast, and we pick a song the night before, and in the morning, 10 o'clock, have some breakfast, and then go in, and we would start tracking. And I mean, we were making decisions like on Daughter and Rearview Mirror. It was like, Dave, why don't you try setting up your Ludwig kit in the tile room instead of my tour kit, which was set up in the big room. I just put up a bass drum and a floor tom and one cymbal and just went for it, even though I'd been working on the song with my full kit. So it was like stripping it down. It's why, like the version of Daughter on the album versus the version of Daughter live, they're two different drum parts because,
Yeah.
And it's because, at 10:30 in the morning, we decided, you know what? I want to try it on the Ludwig kit. Without all the symbols and without, and there were other things like Animal, where Brendan the night before had mentioned how much he dislikes splash cymbals and China types. He said he hated China cymbals. So the next morning I went in and set up 8 China cymbals. And that's, the song Animal has 8 China cymbals on it because Brendan made that comment the night before. And we would play, and there were songs on that record that I tracked without anybody else in my headphones other than a click track. And when I was done, it was like, okay, and then the guys would recut any shaky parts or elements to the drum track that I laid down, and we would play, record, they would overdub, and then we would eat dinner and listen to the mix. It was like that quick, Yeah,
that's fast.
So it was really, really cool. Yeah, Brendan works fast, and I can't thank Brendan O'Brien enough for the way he handled the dynamics of the band members, and the fact that his skill set, both as a musician and his artistry as a producer and an engineer, was far and above our pay grade.
Oh man!
And he never once made you feel like you weren't capable, And that's it's such a huge thing for a drummer, especially in that band where there were a lot of introverted personalities and a lot of unspoken things, that any other producer. Brendan knew how to handle us. He knew how to handle me, and I can never say enough kind things about his talent and him as a person. Fantastic guy.
Oh, I love hearing that. Like I said, my other favorite track is WMA because it's such like an outlier out of the band's entire discography. The drumming is so like tribal. It's just that hits me right deep in the soul. That the way it starts, it's one of the most incredible song the band has ever recorded, in my opinion.
Interesting, that one, it was me and Stone in the rehearsal room and him playing this kind of hypnotic Stone Gossard, guitar thing. And it's just, I mean, it really, literally, I walked in, he was playing this thing, I sat down and played the drum part. And I mean, that song came together so quickly. And then once we got in the studio, I mean, it came together so quickly that we didn't really play it that often when we were doing the writing stuff. And then once we got in the studio, I laid down drums, and the decision was made to take and just create a loop out of the first, 4 bars, which were basically the same thing over and over. So Brendan made a loop of that, and we recorded the track. And then I went back to Seattle and came back, and Brendan had some percussion stuff lying around, and I saw these octobons, and I was like, wow, those are cool. Fucking, the drummer for the Police had some of those. Oh. And so I never banged on them or anything. And I just basically, I said, hey, Brendan, would you mind if and he's like, no, go ahead. So he stuck a couple mics on them, and I went in the big room, and he hit play and record, and that was it. It's just one pass through. I did the octobon overdubs. And then we did another percussion overdub, which was everybody in the band, like, abusing fucking percussion in the big room all at the same time. And that's the chorus, the chorus racket that comes in. Yeah. And it was cool because not everybody in that band had great time on percussion stuff. So it actually made it better because it went from being such a regimented part to being, to like opening up and having that kind of, like at the end during Mike's wacky ass guitar solo. Yeah. You can hear how the percussion's kind of off and a little wonky. Okay. Yeah, that song, it was just, again, we were really free with our approach. We didn't think about, or at least not that I was aware of, but, I don't know if the other guys did, but I don't think so. We didn't think about following up the 10 record. I think at that point, we had been on the road together so long, and the songs from the 10 album had taken on a new life, and the band became a really, I don't think Pearl Jam, it's no slight towards Dave Cruzen at all, but I think the dynamic of the power and the push of my drumming behind the band made the band a much more people getting kicked in the head sort of band than they would have been if the 10 record was played as it was. I don't think it was intended to be such a hard rock band, Oh, and so
I think you really helped propel them to where they've gone.
Yeah, I think that ultimately maybe that's why I got fired. I don't know.
All right, well, we'll get to that.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I'll look forward to that.
But one song I'm so curious about is The Real Thing with Cypress Hill. How did that come about? Because that whole soundtrack is amazing.
Well, at first we were going to do a song with Chrissy Hynde, and wow. Yeah, and we were going to do it with Greenpeace's mobile studio at Skywalker Ranch.
Oh my gosh!
And we got there and set up in the big sound stage and recorded some stuff. And she never showed. Something happened there, for whatever reason, it never came together. And then the guys from Cypress Hill, who Stone and the other guys in the band had known, it just became the idea was, hey, we'll do this thing with Cypress Hill. And Stone had this riff, of course, and Stone had this, zip-a-tally-da-da-doom, doom, da-da-da-loop. That's what he was saying. And so we recorded that, I think we maybe played through the idea once or twice, and then that was it, and then turned it over to Cypress Hill, and they cut it up, and next thing you know, we get this track back from them, and it was just like, wow, okay, great, there you go. So it was really simple, and there was a version of it before my drums got turned into loops and stuff. Yeah. That was a lot funkier. I wish I could hear that version where, I was definitely like, I was kick drum heavy, just, it was like, it just, but it, as is the case sometimes less is more. So
yeah.
Still, one of my favorite Pearl Jam moments is is hearing a dude say clack clack bang bang. It's like.
Yeah.
Swoop. Clack, clack, bang, bang, cause it ain't no thing when I hang back stone and I kick that funky slang. I got the funk when I got to do the L thing, cause ain't nothing like the real thing. Ain't nothing like the real thing. Ain't nothing but the real.
Great, really good time.
That is. So then the Versus tour comes around, and did you first? Okay, so I know that's around the time. That is the time when the band kind of fought Ticketmaster, right? That was that. Right.
No.
Okay.
Ticketmaster. It was like basically, we were keeping the prices down, and at that point, I mean, no matter what size the venue, we would announce that we were doing a show, and it would sell out in 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
So all of a sudden, we started noticing that there were these ticket fees, that were ridiculous in some cities. And it was like, wow, we're trying to keep our ticket prices under $10, and all of a sudden there's these $18 ticket charges. And it's like, what is the service fee for? I mean, the shows are selling out in 10 minutes. It's not like they're earning that $8,
Yeah.
And that started the conversation of, why is Ticketmaster the only game in town, and why are they making so much money for doing nothing?
Right.
And, that started that discussion. To be quite honest, at that point, I was dealing with getting cortisone shots multiple times a week, going straight from the stage into laying on top of a garbage can full of ice for 15, 20 minutes, as long as I could stand it, just so I could sleep that night to get up the next day and damage myself some more. Where I was at was I was really, and I guess, this is where things started to get weird, because I looked at it this way. I was like, what the fuck are we complaining about?
Yeah.
It's like, we're selling out so many shows. Everything we do, we're on top of the world right now. Why don't we just lower our prices some more? Who gives a shit? Like, what's the big deal? And, but I mean, I understood where Eddie and Jeff were coming from, but so many dynamics had shifted to this point. The Eddie chants at shows, and the fact that Eddie, had stopped referring to the band about anything. When he did interviews, it was all about him.
Yeah.
He never mentioned the band. And when he referred to us on stage, he referred to me as the drummer. Shit like that. So there was this weird thing brewing and it was just this feeling of weirdness all the time that was going on. And there was one time where I kind of challenged Eddie on something just by saying, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Yeah. And he didn't speak to me for a couple of weeks. It was like that kind of weird shit. And, find out later that he had already mentioned to Jack Irons, if you ever want the gig, let me know. It was like, so there was already this thing happening that I wasn't aware of. I just felt, and it made it really uncomfortable. And also the power structure. Eddie's girlfriend was working at the office, who became his wife and all that. But there was just a dynamic that when Eddie and I were together, we could talk, we'd laugh, we'd hang out. But when the band was together, Eddie treated me different.
Oh, wow.
So it was really, and I don't know if it was consciously manipulative or whatever, but looking back on it, it was the most unhealthy situation because it just kept me from having solid footing, and our management at the time, money started coming in and the dynamic shifted in the sense that everybody had something to lose all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Whereas before we were working really hard to gain something that we all wanted to achieve. And then we achieved it. And all of a sudden there was, house payments that were in jeopardy if Eddie wasn't happy, and things like that,
Yeah.
So
I get that. Yeah.
I mean, I remember a time where Eddie was talking to our manager, and Eddie said, "Hey, I was talking to Neil and he mentioned how they had different members of the bands. Neil's band had different managers." And Eddie said, "So how does that work?" And Kelly went, "What?" And Eddie said, "Nothing, never mind," and walked out of the room. And I thought, holy shit. Because I saw Kelly go, "Oh, fuck." And from then on, it was Eddie's band,
Wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of tough, and and seeing all that develop, and then the Ticketmaster thing, I just thought, you know what? Why are we? I mean, it's like changing the world is one thing, but this isn't really, to me, it didn't seem like it was a fight that we needed to make, especially at that time, because it didn't make sense.
Right.
And of course, the band, because I mean, we were planning on doing a tour without Ticketmaster. We didn't need Ticketmaster. We had talked about doing a tour on trains. We were going to do like our own circus where we'd pull up and set up our stage and do our show and then take it down and leave without Ticketmaster, without anyone.
Oh.
And we could have done it. I mean, and it was just one of those things. I just didn't agree with it. And so when the word came down that there was like this congressional hearing and all this was going to take place, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I went to the other side of the world and went to Indonesia and hung out, and those guys handled that, whatever it was. And I just distanced myself from that whole Ticketmaster thing. I didn't think it was, to me, it was like, come on, not yet. We don't, I'm still trying to get my feet under working with a singer that refers to me as the drummer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
So.
it seemed like that whole was a weird time for the band as a whole.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, because at that point it was like, there was shit happening where, Eddie went through his making everyone think he was, out of his mind, drunk or high or whatever. And like the MTV, or Animal, performance of Animal and playing with Neil Young, the way Eddie performed that night. Yeah, I just didn't understand it, There was like, for whatever his agenda was, it was sacrificing the band. And but he was, everybody had to deal with stuff the way they had to deal with it. I'm not knocking him. I just didn't understand it.
Right, yeah.
I just didn't understand. And I remember a conversation I had with Stone where, I mentioned these things and Stone said, I don't care as long as he shows up to sing.
Yeah.
And that's when I started going, wow, okay. And that's, that's when I started, I needed my tonsils taken out. I didn't know it at the time. So I was on a lot of antibiotics, and I had in front of, 10,000+ people, I had a panic attack on stage.
Oh, wow.
And I'd never felt anything like that,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I left the stage before the encore and didn't know what was going on. So they took me to the hospital to get checked out. And, while I was gone, the band, did an encore with Urge Overkill's drummer and shit like that. And I didn't mind that. But once I got back to the bus from the hospital, not one person in the band asked me how I was doing,
Oh, wow.
It was like, it had gotten to that dysfunctional level.
Man.
And I don't think it was anything personal. I think it was just at the time, everybody was dealing with their own, whether it was demons or pressures or whatever. Everyone was dealing with their own stuff,
Yeah.
And I was a young kid, I grew up with headphones and bong hits and Zeppelin, and, I didn't have high school and college social skills, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, hey dude, hey man, you know, high five, blah, blah, blah. You know, it was a Texas bro hang behind Club Dada looking in the window with my friends.
Right.
And then next thing you know, I'm, you know, in a bus with these heavy thinking, introverted people, and we're all obtaining success at a level which, you know, we could only have dreamed of.
Right.
And so, yeah, we were all going through our stuff, you know. I wish we'd have had a better manager, you know, someone who could have said, you know, someone who could have recognized the help that we needed as a band to stay together as a band.
Yeah. It's not, gosh, I don't even, it sounds like it was just a difficult spot for everybody. And
of course.
So then recording, I guess, starts for Vitology at some point after that. And that's when...
Yeah, well, we did the Versus tour, and we were doing Vitology during the Versus tour.
Okay.
We were going into studios while we were on the road. And just, you know, like Tremor Christ came out of a stone riff. I think I might have played 2 passes and it was done, you know?
Wow.
It was just like spontaneous. Yeah. And, you know, it was like that. And then when we got back to Seattle and we were off tour, you know, again, you know, at this point, then I had my tonsils taken out and all this, but, you know, the dynamic had shifted in such a way that I almost felt like the dynamic between Eddie and I, he needed it to create the friction to write good rock lyrics in a way. But at the same time, at the time, I didn't feel friction between us or anyone in the band. I just felt like there was a disassociative thing. And it had built up during the tour from that dynamic of us not really communicating anymore. You know, when we get on stage, the band was a powerhouse, and, you know, we laughed together, we cried together, eye contact, we related to one another. Yeah. But when we were off stage, we went our separate ways, you know, and we were still living on a bus together. You know, we were still living on a bus together, going our separate ways.
Oh, wow.
We didn't really communicate that much, but we did through music. And, you know, the Vitology record was powerful, but once we got back to Seattle, you know, I was in a new house, and it was such a different dynamic, and I was still dealing with this anxiety shit, you know? So going into the studio, and so that played a big role in the dynamic between us. And, you know, I didn't know, you know, one thing about anxiety is it really, the way it affected me is it's like I became, you know, more selfish in a way, more like self-centered, because I was so focused on trying to just keep it together, you know, trying to deal with this feeling of doom.
Yeah.
That was like, you know, and in that, you know, I was, you know, I couldn't express it. I talked to Mike about it once, and he looked at me and said, "You're freaking me out." So that was the last time we spoke about it, you know?
Yeah, that's not a thing.
But, you know, I just looked at it like, you know, the music is doing good things. And so if we just kept focusing on that, and, you know, I just wasn't aware of any other dynamic that might've been going on, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I've heard many different things about, you know, what happened with me in the band, you know, I've heard many different versions from the guys in the band, but again, I think if the band's management had more integrity and loyalty to the band and the fans rather than loyalty to himself and certain members, I think it would have been different, you know? Like U2, you know, they almost broke up, and their management scammed them all together and pretty much locked them in a house with a shrink and said, work your shit out, you know?
Yeah.
And they did. I mean, 'cause they made a record where they weren't even in the studio together.
Oh, God.
You know, they were that, they were that, I think it was maybe the Octung Baby record or the one after it, but they weren't even talking, you know?
Oh, jeez.
And their management was smart enough to say, look, you know, you got issues, you can work through them. You know, deal with it, accept each other as people and realize this music's important and this and that. And I wish Kelly Curtis would have done that with the band. I mean, you know, when I met with Stone that morning, I spoke to Kelly and Eddie, and neither one of them led on that I was going to be fired the next day, you know, you know, and when I got together with Stone, I was thinking we were going to talk about, you know, producers or where we were going next or this or that.
Yeah.
And the first words out of his mouth was, we're looking for a new drummer. What? Yeah. So.
Oh, man.
But, you know, my best friend, as he said, I called him up when I left hanging out with Stone. And it was really emotional between Stone and I. And I called my friend and I said, you know, I just got fired. And his response was, good. You'd have never quit that fucking band anyway. And that's how so many people, reacted to it. It's like, good. You know, you were unhappy with those guys and, you know, there's so much more to what you want to do and this and that. But to me, it was just devastating. I'd never been kicked out of anything, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so, you know, regardless of what they think, you know, that was your life for
family. Yeah, it was family to me, you know. And all of a sudden, you know, I was just like, had no idea what to do or where to go, or you know, it was just like so abrupt, you know.
Yeah. So what did you do? I mean, did you take some time off? I know you were on that drugs thing.
Drugs. Drugs.
Okay. That's one way to go.
No, it was no, I went back to my roots. I went back to where it came from. I went back to Texas and worked at soul poisoning out of my system, as Paul Slavens put it. I got with all those guys that were my heroes in Texas, and Doug Neal and Gerald Phillips and, you know, the original Dr. Tongue guys and
nice
Paul Slavens, and Gary Muller from the Matt Chamberlain's early band, and just got everybody in the studio and we started making music, and it was like, wow, this is really fun, you know?
Yeah.
And so then I found, I just asked everybody, I said, hey, you know, what are you guys doing for about a year? I said, you know, if I can, you know, how much would it cost for each of you to be able to live for a year? And basically we found this 7,000 square foot single story Rambler on hundreds and hundreds of acres and turned it into a studio, and everybody showed up, and for a year we just made music.
Oh, wow.
And that was the Green Romance Orchestra sessions.
That's
fantastic.
Look away. Find yourself some other day. Don't talk. You've got nothing to say.
So what is behind the name?
Green Romance Orchestra?
Yeah.
Well, it was this pear stone carving that I found at Pike Street Market of these frogs. And on the kick drum head, it said the Green Romance Orchestra.
Okay.
And that was it. And that just stuck, you know. And and man, I love those guys. Some of the sweetest, most caring people, and there's just exceptional musicians, and musically, it was the time of my life. I mean, it was like, I mean, we put together these 2 albums of songs that were accessibly, it was like accessible eclecticism. Yeah, but we had, 1,000 hours of Zappa jams, about Charlton Heston and I mean, just really great freeform jazz odyssey. Basically, we were either focusing on a track or laughing our asses off.
Oh,
it was one of the two. And so it was the best for me. And then after that, in the middle of all that, I went and started talking with Axl about the Guns N' Roses thing, and that was a trip.
that album is just I don't know, a disaster. Is that the right word?
Well, when I started talking to Axl, we had the same lawyer, and she got in touch with me, and she told me that Axl had been into my playing for a long time. And by this point, I'd become friends with Matt Sorum and this and that. And, Axl was, I don't want to say paranoid, but he had been through so much with the success of Guns N' Roses and the band falling apart and the alliance of the band members splitting up. And
sounds familiar.
Everything was happening. Yeah, it was really hardcore. And so, we spoke so often for so long before we even met, just so he would feel comfortable, with me even entering their camp,
Wow. Okay.
And I like Axl. I love Axl. I enjoyed getting to know him, and our conversations were fantastic. And I really look forward to playing music, because he told me that what he wanted was the band to continue and be bigger than it ever was. And I thought, holy shit, now that's a task.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so that inspired me, the idea that he wanted to work that hard, and knowing that it was going to require a lot of work, and it was exciting to me. And so we got to a point where I went to LA, and, and I talked to the management. I mean, at first it even started out, the management was like, well, you talk to me, and then I'll talk to Axl, and then he'll talk to me, and then I'll talk to you. And I was like, oh my God. So I can't do that. I need Axl's number,
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I called his house, Beth, his assistant, answered, and I said, hi, it's David Abbruzzese for Axl. And she was like kind of quiet. Okay, hold on a minute. A few minutes went by, and then Axl got on the phone. He's like, hello? And I'm like, hey, man, it's Dave. And she's, how'd you get my number? But then we started talking, and it was all cool. And I mean, the band at that point, it was Podboy and me on drums from Nine Inch Nails, and Robin Fink from Nine Inch Nails on guitar, and Duff, and Dizzy, and Paul, Axl's friend, on guitar. And we were rehearsing and writing right next door to one of my best friends, family to me, Joe Gaswood, mastering engineer. His room was next door. So it was really cool, but there was something that I told the management at the beginning, which was, look, I've been chewed up and spat out by the big machine.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to me that I believe in you, management, as much as I believe in me and this music, or it can't work, because that was something I just refused to be a part of again, was mismanagement.
Yeah.
I refused to put all my faith and trust in someone when they had their own agenda, which I just couldn't do it.
Right.
So he assured me that that wasn't the case. And down the road, I talked to him. His name was Doug. And I told him, he asked how things were going. And I said, going great. But this new music that we're coming up with is so heavy, and it's so not Guns N' Roses. I mean,
wow.
To me, it was fucking, if it would have been allowed to be where it was going, it was like, this is going to set people on their ass,
Really? Oh.
And so I said, what about it being an Axl thing rather than a Guns N' Roses thing? And the comment was, well, here's the thing, basically we're going to let Axel do this. And when it falls flat on his face, hopefully that'll be the motivation for him to get Slash back.
Oh,
And he said, just stick with it because that'll be your in.
oh, wow.
And I was just like, oh, fuck me. I mean, and all of a sudden I remember hanging up and sitting there going, fuck. And I went back to Seattle and I was like, fuck. It's like, here's this guy that, of course, his persona and what I thought of him all those years was so different than the person that I was getting to know and the person that I truly cared about. And now I'm thinking, okay, if Axel would have heard that conversation, it would have first of all, it'd break his heart.
Yeah.
Second of all, he would have fired everybody. And he probably would have never done anything ever again because it was, it seemed to me like he was at that point where, he didn't have it in him to survive finding out that he was being played like that.
Oh, wow.
He needed to trust the people around him. And I mean, he was showing up at rehearsals every day, which is something he'd never done before. It was like there was something going on that he was excited about. And when the management told me this, I was like, okay, well, what the fuck do I do? I mean, on the one hand, here's this guy. And I hadn't really bonded with anyone else. I mean, Duff and I had spoke and all this, but Axel and I just felt like we were becoming friends. And it was like, okay, here's this guy that I owe the truth to. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like the idea, I mean, it's even making my stomach hurt now. The idea of staying in that and working on music, knowing that it was just a means to an end for a record company and management that wanted to make their money. It was like, ugh. But if I tell Axel, he's going to lose his fucking marbles.
Yeah.
And if I don't tell him, then am I, I'm even more responsible for this shady bullshit than they are. It's even more disgusting and despicable to play that role of like sit back and so it was like, okay, so I quit.
Wow.
I told him that I had to be a musician first and a rock star second.
Oh, wow.
That was the excuse I used. And boy, did he get mad at me.
Oh, man.
Wow. He got very, very, very angry. He called me up and he screamed a bunch of expletives at me for quite a long time. And then that was the end of that.
Jeez.
And it was heartbreaking, and I hadn't admitted to that story and told the truth about it till about 6, 7, 8 months ago.
Really?
Yeah, that's what went down. And now seeing those guys out and seeing that Axel's in a healthy place and the bands, they're all doing so well. It's like, you know what? That truth has to come out, because I owe that truth to Axel. And, it's like, it's disappointing because what could have been and the relationship that was beginning between us was, and it still is valuable to me. And I enjoyed it and I was appreciating it. And it was like the first real kind of like, so what are you going to be, Dave? You going to have fucking integrity or are you going to be a rock star? And I so I made the choice to exit the project and it just had to be done.
That blows me away because that, like you said, it's so easy to just say, well, I'll just ride this out. And, you took...
Oh, you have no idea, brother. You have no idea. You have no fucking idea the contract, what they were going to pay me and what they were going to give me and the percentages. It was obscene. It was fucking obscene. And it was obscene. And it was so, I mean, you know, when me and my attorney were talking, it's like, what the fuck do I ask for? I don't know how to, I just want to play fucking, you know, I always just said, well, let's just play music and whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And Axel said, no, we can't play music until we get it all on paper.
What?
So I was like, well, what the fuck do I ask for? You know, she said, ask for everything. And I was like, what? Yeah, ask for everything. And then they'll respond and you'll go from there. And I said, okay. So we asked for everything. And I mean, everything. It was ridiculous.
Oh.
And the response was, okay.
Wow.
I was like, what? What? 9% of the fucking Merc?
Whoa.
You know, I mean, it was ridiculous. The amount of money that was on the table was obscene, and it was like, it made me uncomfortable. It was like, wow, Jesus Christ, this is fucking crazy money. But you know, and that's really what. Yeah, I just didn't feel right about any of it after finding out that it would have just been, you know.
Yeah. It's
you know, my in. It was like, ugh.
Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Yeah, you become your pals and make this record, and you know, as long as Axel's happy, the happier he is. If it doesn't succeed, the more likely it'll be that then we can bring Slash back. And oh, come on, man. Yeah. It's big business, big fucking business, you know?
Yeah. So what happened?
I mean, and then, you know, add to that, you know, Epic and Sony made sure that the Green Romance Orchestra stuff never saw the light of day.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, it's tough to find. There's some stuff on YouTube and you've got your stuff on the Bandcamp.
Yeah, but that's just there for whatever, you know, the album, when we put it out, I mean, Tower Records had us in the number one slot on their listening station at Christmas, which is,
ooh, wow.
You know, yeah. And I mean, and we shipped tens of thousands of records, and not one of them made it to the record store shelves. They all stayed in the back room unopened for some odd reason.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was during Pearl Jam's, you know, year or two of not doing press and all that stuff. And I, you know, the thought was that they just, you know, it was like, I don't know if it was I don't think it was the band, but it was, you know, maybe management and the label. They just didn't want to give me a platform because they were afraid of what I might say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just, I mean, the record is like, when I went around to labels stopping it at first, they were all like, you know, we've only got one chance to capitalize on this Pearl Jam angle. It's like, no, this isn't a Pearl Jam angle record,
right, yeah,
at all, you know. And so it just, it just soured it just left a sour taste in my mouth for the whole thing. So at that point, you know, after the Guns N' Roses thing and all that, I built my own studio up in Seattle and had the most unbelievable setup and just worked on music that I loved with people that might not get a chance to work on the music they loved, you know?
Oh, that's
so it was cool.
I'm like, one of the things that I saw recently come out was the track you did with Sean Smith, Child of the Water I Am.
Some more till it's as much as I can get. Take me up to a higher plane where I can see above the crowd. Let me dance in the summer rain like the child of the water I am. Oh yeah, like the child of the water I am. Oh yeah.
And I miss that guy. He was going to be one of the very first, like the first 5 episodes I did of this podcast, but he passed away. He had
man,
to do it. And then like 2 weeks before we were going to record is when he passed.
Wow. It would have been great to hear that one. Cause he had, you know, I saw him online and I just popped in and said, hey man, you know, we had jammed together once at some warehouse in Seattle and impromptu. It was like me and Sean Lennon and him and Stone and some other people. And
Man.
I always just liked Sean. You know, he's just such a nice guy, and I loved his voice. And I just said, "Hey, man, you know, I love your music." And he said, "Hey, man, I love your drumming." I was like, "Well, I want to do a solo album. Would you consider being the voice for it?" And he was like, "I'd love it." So he flew to where I was, and from the moment he showed up, we sat down and talked, and it was a trip because, you know, we both kind of went through the same thing with the Pearl Jam machine, you know, and the state of the world at the time. Donald Trump was happening, and both of us had our hearts were broken in the same way.
Yeah.
And so we sat down, and I'd grab my guitar and start playing, and he'd start singing. It was like, wait a minute. Are we actually, you know, what's going on here? Are we falling in love with each other or what, you know? And we started making a record, and the music was gut-wrenchingly beautiful and powerful as shit.
Creating rain out of the dust of man. We try to hide the shame the best we can. Which rolls around our head like thunderstorms. Neglecting life is becoming the norm. To people like us, it's plain to see. It's time to change this reality.
And I mean, you know, he flew back home, and we were sending each other things back and forth. You know, he sang a couple of songs into his laptop microphone on the way back home, you know, on the airplane. And I mean, we were both really fired up about what we were doing. And by this point, we had a good solid 10 or more songs and song ideas. And we made plans for him to fly back and, you know, get right to it and make this record. And it was like, okay, cool. You know, I'll get you the ticket. We'll this and that. Let's talk again in a couple of days, and we'll figure out what day exactly and this and that.
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, I sent him, you know, a message and didn't hear back from him. And then a few days later, didn't hear back from him again. I was like, And then I got word that he had passed.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. It was so incredibly sad and devastating. I mean, I hadn't felt like that just, I mean, man, I hadn't cried like that. I mean, since my mom passed, you know.
Wow.
And it was intense. And I mean, at that point, I was writing so much music and playing so much music. And that moment that I found that he passed, I didn't touch an instrument for 2 years after that.
Wow.
I just couldn't. This music that was just sitting there waiting, you know, I couldn't get past it being unfinished and moving on to something else. And I couldn't listen to it, and I couldn't revisit it.
Yeah.
You know, and
I can understand.
There are a few songs that I went back and dug up, and, you know, the way Sean worked is he would just freestyle lyrics, and he didn't write shit down. So I had all these different passes of different vocal ideas he had. So I was editing songs together, editing lyrics together, and finished a few things. I'll send you a couple if you like that.
Oh yeah, that would be.
You know, but then I got a message from his estate or his girlfriend, whoever, that basically said, you know, please send all the tracks that Sean did, send them to us and this and that.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, if you want to use them, you know, we'll talk about it or this and that. Like,
oh my God.
So, you know, and at that, you know, I think all the legal stuff, and I'm just guessing here, by the way, you know, there was one song on the first anniversary of his death. There was one song that I put out as a tribute to him, free on YouTube, that I thought was fitting and moving and total tribute. And I put it out, and within hours, it was ripped off of YouTube, and I got a really nasty email saying, "How dare I?" And I was like, "What the fuck?" And it just reeked of people trying to protect Sean's legacy. And I just have to guess it was Regan and Stone and those people that, I mean, and I can understand it, but I think in all the years that passed since I spoke to any of those guys or that camp, there's a lot of animosity built up that is unwarranted, Yeah. But again, that's just speculation. But yeah, so I just ended up having to eat it, to kind of squash that album, and it's really a shame because that level of connection that he and I had, musically and personally, I mean, I really love the guy. Yeah. For it to be removed so abruptly, and it's like it really set me back on my heels, and I haven't. It's not something you find every day,
Yeah.
It's not so.
Yeah. And it kind of smacks of the whole Guns N' Roses thing again, where it's.
In a way, yeah. I mean, there's a big machine that makes money off of people's soul, and it's unhealthy. It's an unhealthy machine. So there's a lot of, especially in this world of text messages and emails, you send a message to someone that's heartfelt. If they read it in the wrong tone of voice, you're fucked.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's like, I would get messages back that were just like, what the fuck? It seems so aggressive.
Yeah.
I've
had that myself.
I'm not that guy, but I think especially the Pearl Jam camp, I think, they would always interpret my messages as aggressive because I had every right to be angry, and I wasn't. So the last thing they would do is read my written words kindly, because they think there's no way this guy's probably hates us, whatever. So. Yeah.
So I know you've done some awesome stuff.
And don't forget, I worked with Peter Cornell, which was one of the most awesome musical experiences as well.
Oh, really?
You don't know about that record?
No. Tell me.
Oh man, you should. Peter's Chris's older brother, and they had a band, Grace Will, who plays with Styx now, and Peter had a band. And they came in, they had a demo, and they just wanted me to kind of punch it up a little bit, mix-wise. And I ended up really getting into it.
Oh, nice.
So I spent a lot of time on it, and I remember the day they came in to hear what I had done for their demo. They were wanting to do some shows on the West Coast, so they wanted me to kind of punch up the mixes a little bit. And Chris came in, and it was the first time I'd seen Chris in a long time, and it was so great. And we sat, and they ended up putting it out as an EP because it sounded so good, which I thought was really cool.
Oh wow!
But then years later, Peter reached out to me, and he had a bunch of demos of songs that he's written. He went through rehab and some other things, and he put together an album. And it was really cool. It was so unique, and really stripped down. And I think it might have even been him playing all the instruments. And he said, he just wanted to send it and see if I could do some stuff to it, sonically, or if I wanted to put some drums on it or whatever. And when I got it, I sent him back the first few songs. I put drums on them. And his management was like, "Holy shit!"
Oh wow!
And it came so natural. The whole record. I mean, there were songs on the album where I didn't even listen to the song. I just had the tempo, and I just started playing. And what I felt should be there, the transitions, everything. It's like I was done. It was like one and done. Holy shit, this is great, But what he was singing about and what he was going through mimicked exactly where I was at in my life. And I felt every word and really powerful record.
So I packed another load and I cracked another beer. By the time I hit the road, my course was always crystal clear.
Yeah, it's Peter Cornell. The album's called Champion. And I mean, I have never been involved with another album that was as open and honest an expression of a songwriter. And what he was going through is that one. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, and it's such a pleasure to be a part of the album.
Oh.
And it was cool too, because I went to, I was going through the end of a shitty marriage, and I ended up reconnecting with, again, back to when I was going into high school. I had to wait for my marching drums because the guy who played them the year before never gave them back to the high school. And his name was Rick St. Clair. And Rick and I played in bands together when I was like 15, 16 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was like, it was really cool. And when Peter asked me to do this record, I had just reached out to Rick because I was back in Texas, and he's like, "Hey, we just built this little studio." And I was like, "Oh, well, Peter Cornell sent me this record. Maybe I can just record you guys play." And so we, reconnected and had my old schoolhood chum engineering the drum tracks, which was really cool,
That's awesome.
So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, GW built me this smoking kit. Wow. So yeah, it was great. But that record, if you haven't heard it, you owe it to yourself to check it out. It's on YouTube and Spotify and all that stuff. But
I will have to.
Really, 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 really great fucking record.
Oh,
great record. I love Peter. Peter's one of the coolest guys, one of the nicest guys ever.
Oh,
really, really, really great.
Well, yeah. Do a podcast.
I bet he would. He's a great guy, and he has a lot of things to talk about.
I would love to. I know you've done some music with some mutual friends like Jeff Fielder. I'll just listen to Make It Right.
It's the same every day. Isn't mine. I feel like a child, so lost in time. Yeah. I feel like a child.
Oh wow!
And you recently recorded with my buddy Scott Reeder. So I'm not.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me too much about what's going on with that project, but it's
who knows? It came up. John X, engineer, badass spaceman from Los Angeles, got in touch with me. He said, "I'm doing this project, and if you, I'd love to be involved, whatever." And it's for I don't know, some sort of. I can't even remember off the top of my head. It was a really cool idea. And the songs were, it's like I forget what they're called. Maybe it'll come to me. But it was a great idea. And they needed basically an action supporting soundtrack. And so they had these songs, and it was a lot of fun. And then, John was like, "Hey, man, Scott Reeder's going to play bass." It's like, cool, from Caius, fuck, that's badass. And so we just kind of, as things do and involve, we just get to know each other. And it was really awesome. And, it's like Jeff, bless his heart. Jeff had a band called Speakeasy Junction.
Yeah.
And I rarely went out around Seattle. And one day I went out and I was standing on these steps. It was like a 3-story, a really steep staircase down to where bands were playing. And I'm standing there and someone was asking me, "Hey, Jay, would never see you out." And I was like, "Yeah, well, it's because, the band that was playing is like, that's why, fucking music's terrible." And then we were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden I heard like this B3, and what the fuck? And I looked down, and it's like this guys in this band, and they were all switching instruments, and it was so soulful, and they, harmonies, and the music was amazing. And I thought, holy shit, man, these guys carried a fucking B3 down these stairs and a Leslie to play open mic gig.
Wow.
And they're fucking a great band and so talented. And I just afterwards, I just approached them and I said, "Hey, man, you guys recorded anything?" And they're like, "No, blah, blah, blah." And so I took them and we went into a vast, Stuart Holloman's place.
Yeah.
And, I recorded a demo for him. And that started mine and Jeff's friendship. And when I built my studio in Seattle, Jeff, who was just feasting on knowledge at that point, he was such a tremendous musician.
Yeah.
But, he was there watching me go through an incredible cocaine-fueled fucking insanity. Oh, Jesus. And,
oh, man.
yeah. And I mean, Mike Gillen and John Bush and Brad Hauser and fucking JJ Jungle and John Speech, all these Zach Baird, all these monster players coming through, Gary Muller and Paul. And here's Jeff, I remember the first jam that we had. It was like the first time Jeff had ever done anything like that. And he stepped up and just was, maybe I can send you some of that stuff. It'll blow your mind.
Oh.
I mean, it is really, really special. It's Mike Dillon on percussion and Gary Muller and Zach Baird from Korn, and I think he might be Ghost now. And we just, it was like 1 a.m. But my studio was set up to where it was like any instrument you picked, there was 50 guitars and drums. Shit was everywhere. And I mean, there were tube headphones and,
God.
yeah. Oh yeah. It was, it was $3 million worth of my own little space,
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible. But Jeff is probably, one of the most talented people I've had the pleasure of getting to know and watch develop as a person and as a player. I mean, he's right up there. Like I worked for a year or more with Roger Hodgson from Supertramp, and Jeff strikes me in that same way of just like, wow, he's the real deal, He's really talented. I love him to death.
He's such a sweet guy too.
Oh, he's Jeff. He's tough. He's a tough motherfucker. He really is.
Yeah.
His heart's on his sleeve, but I dare you to try to poke it.
Oh.
I dare you. He's an amazing guy. I love him to death.
He really.
But yeah, he's he joined me for a pandemic jam of Superstition from Jeff Beck.
Oh, nice.
Which was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was like the pandemic was cool. There's a lot of things on my little YouTube channel that were people that I would just see, like Joanna Connors. Saw her play slide guitar on a YouTube video. I was like, holy shit. And I reached out and said, hey, let's do something. And so she said, okay. And we did a couple things together. And Jeff Nolan from the I Love You band, which was the band that went out and opened for Pearl Jam on our first leg of our first van tour. Oh, wow. That guitar player always blew my mind. And so I reached out to him, and, it's like, I always kept in touch with all these folks, and Bernard Fowler, from Tackhead and Stones and all these unbelievable, things that he's done. Incredible. He joined in for a Kinks cover. It's just like, nice. Everyone was at home, so I just would call up all my pals and say, hey, I've got an idea. And, yeah, it was really good. Kept me going for sure.
So what's in the future for you?
Holy shit.
Working on.
Yeah. Death. Between that and now, I don't know.
But something musical.
Yeah, it's all musical. I can't help it. It's even my speech impediment has a, you can tap your toe to it. But yeah, there's so much. There's Utopia guys. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
That was something really special. When Chris unexpectedly on my birthday passed away.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was on your birthday.
It was just like, oh, ton of bricks. And I was with Peter. Peter went up and flew back with Chris and all that. And I was with Peter a lot on the phone through all that. And it was really emotional, really intense time. And such a shock, and then I get this email from these guys in India, and it was so moving. They wanted to do a tribute to Chris, and they asked me if I would be a part of it. And it, had it been worded in any other way or presented in any other way, there was, but it was so poignant and respectful that it allowed me to say, yeah, I want to hear what you're talking about. And then when I heard the music, it was just like, what? I have to be a part of this. And I tracked the drums and sent them tracked the drums, recorded myself playing and all that stuff, video-wise. And they edited it together. Had you seen the Seasons tribute? Have you seen that yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, fuck.
Dreams that never made my bed, and I'm lost behind words I'll never find, and I'm left behind as the seasons roll on by.
Blew my mind how well and how unique and powerful. And I sent a copy of it to Peter and Matt. And when Peter responded with the way he did to it, I knew it was the right thing to do. And these guys, three of the most incredibly talented people, not just musically, but as people.
No.
They care about humanity. They care about each other and everyone else, very, very passionate and compassionate people, and fortunate enough to have worked on a bunch of other songs together too. And man, yeah, just wow, what a force. Those guys are really something. So hopefully we'll do more. I know we'll do more. But in this day and age, it's not like you put out records anymore. You just put out events, songs. So, but we'll see what happens, what the future holds. I'm sure there'll be more. And at some point, because we've done all of our work together remotely.
Yeah.
We've never been in the same room together.
Wow.
And it blows my mind. And I'll be honest, it was like the first time, we had worked on a few songs together, and then we got on a call together. And I had completely forgot they were Indian. So I was like, hello, how are you today? And the accent, and I was just like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on here? I loved it. Fucking amazing.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was like, well, it was like Hapu from The Simpsons, and I was just losing my mind. I probably should have smoked weed before that call, but I kept laughing, and I think they just thought I was nuts, but whatever. We got along really well.
Well, I kind of woke you up this morning, and I've kept you
that's
for
all right, man.
a couple of hours at this point. I thank you.
Really?
Yeah, it's been.
Holy shit, we have this monumental podcast.
Yes, it is. But it's been amazing.
Excellent.
Thank
Well, I'm curious to see how you edit it all down, or if it'll be a 1 or a 2, or just the most epic podcast.
It'll be
ever.
epic. I won't edit very much out of this at all.
Oh, cool, man.
So,
Well, it's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you, and thank you for being thoughtful and yeah, and you're friends with my friends, so that makes us friends.
oh man, that means the world to me. And if the 1992 me is freaking out like you can't even believe.
That's awesome, man.
But,
Well, the 1992 me is asleep, so we're good.
well, before you go, how is your hand? I mean, are you still in a lot of pain when you play, or how does that?
No. I've just adjusted my style over the years.
Okay.
I mean, people say, "Hey, man, you want to get together and jam?" And I say, "No." But if you want to make a record or work on songs, I'm way down. No, it's funny because I as far as drumming, I feel like I'm far and away I'm such a better musician and a better person and a better player than I've ever been. And my relationship to the music that I play, it's like, I don't think I've ever been more sure-footed as a musician.
I love to hear that.
Than I am now. And so, yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten tired of it.
Well, that's good.
I'm still inspired and I still love playing, and it still shocks me when I'll be in the studio working and there'll be a camera up and I'll finish the track, and then at some point I'll look back and go, holy shit, I'm still beating the fuck out of these things.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I'm pleased. I'm happy and life's good. My daughter just graduated university, which is the best thing ever.
Congratulations.
And thanks, man. Yeah, she did it. She's a badass.
That's awesome.
And now I just hand raised a couple of kittens that are driving me absolutely batshit crazy. Come on, cats.
Oh man.
Oh man. But yeah, everything's good. I can't complain.
Good. Well, thank you so much. Where can people keep track of your music and what you're up to?
Well, Facebook is, I got the blue check there. YouTube is, my YouTube channel is Free Ass Records.
Nice.
All one word. And Free Association Records was my record label for the GRO stuff. And Free Ass Records, I just thought was well put for how things go.
That is amazing.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just basically out and about, whatever, what have you. David Abbruzzese at msn.com is my email. And life was good.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if we getting out to everybody who listens to the podcast, so let me know if you want me to cut that part out. But
I don't give a shit.
All right.
Yeah, if they write me and say something nice, I'll respond. If they don't, I'll just fucking laugh at them and ignore it.
There you go. Spam blocked.
Yeah, there it is.
Well, thank you so much for spending all this time with me and just
a pleasure.
Making me laugh.
It's been a pleasure, man.
I feel like I've actually made a friend tonight, so thank you.
Yes, you have. No problem there.